it all seems pretty hypothetical until you're the one trying to sell jewelry on the side of the road.
That's right.
A $250 trip. She felt like $250, but she paid $350.
I think that's what she said. Yeah. Are we going?
Yeah, we're going.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
I mean the cost. Yeah,
Well,
the cost.
you were mentioning cabbages, right?
Yeah, I noticed the cost of a cabbage because I juice them to make anti-ulcer juice from time to time. It's not a permanent dietary supplement, but yeah, it was 68 cents a pound, I think, before this thing, and then the other day it was 78 cents a pound, which makes perfect sense because supply chains were disrupted and people are out of work and they're printing money and giving it to people, and shelves cleared out in the land of abundance. That's not supposed to happen in America, the greatest country in the world. May it last forever.
I know you don't mean that.
Go ahead and try. It's worth a shot. Maybe we'll be the one. But if it is, I don't know for certain. Of course, I don't know. And there are weirder aspects of hyperinflation. Didn't really happen much in ancient societies where there was no fiat currency. It was actually dependent on the actual pure metal content of coins. Because if a government started diluting the silver or gold in its coinage, and there were other options circulating around, which tended to be the case in like the Mediterranean or something, other people would have simply stopped using those coins. An interesting example is after the first gold coin reintroduced to Europe after Rome, the collapse of it in the West, in the Western Empire. The western half of it was the florin done by the Republic of Florence, because they had a lot of wealth, and they finally went, oh, we can make our own coin again, and that's the florin. And this is in about the 1240s, and it kept its purity for over like 250 years. Because they had
it was always the same amount of gold in that coin.
Gold per coin, yeah. The purity was the same because the discipline, the financial discipline was enforced by the overall economic circumstances.
Including the people they're trading with? And
yes. Because, strangely enough, so if Florence didn't have the gold coin, the florin, before that time, it was a decision they made as a republic. They were like, we have all this wealth from the wool, and we have pilgrims coming down.
Wealth from actual stuff.
Oh yeah. They were wealthy. Yeah. There was a point where it was one of the first Medici's, Cosimo. He had more money than like the King of France, but they were very wealthy. They decided to mint their own coinage. Well, what were they doing before? I mean, the Republic was hundreds of years old at this point. What did they do? A lot of those ancient cultures, whether you're classical civilization or, Northern Italian pre-Renaissance, they didn't even mint their own coins. They didn't even care. They would use other people's coinage. From the Byzantine Empire, they would use Arabic coins.
For trade.
For trade and tax. Yeah.
And taxes,
they would collect taxes in coinage from other governments.
Trade and taxes, those are two things. Are there other things coinage or money is good for?
Wow. Well, I mean,
if I wanted to, taxes, I think I have a vague understanding of. Trade, I have a vague understanding of.
Yeah.
Where if I went to the market to buy cabbage, would I use the coinage or would I use the wool I got from my sheeps?
Depending on your depending on the complexity, yeah, that's what the coin. Yeah, trade and taxes, pretty much. And so most of those governments, let's say you're the Duchy of Milan, or before, they didn't mint their own coinage. So the idea of them printing money, so to speak, by issuing their own coins was not an option, quite literally. They would have, the coins came from outside their own territory.
And that's how everyone's doing business, including the folks going to the market.
Yeah, yeah. And so you're sitting there, you're a wool merchant in Florence, and you're saying, I have the wool from 10,000 sheep ready to go, and I'm only going to accept good coinage from the whole Mediterranean.
Wow.
Kind of a mix. You could go to the market and you might see Byzantine and Arab, and oh God, those would be the two main ones,
Where are we again?
Florence.
Okay.
A little bit north of Rome, sure.
What if I'm not a wool merchant? What if I'm like a subsistence farmer or something?
Well, then you might do barter at a local level.
Okay.
But if the government came and wanted taxes, they would probably
I would
want
need some coin around.
Yeah, you'd want some coin. Yeah.
Because this is, you've already sort of, I don't know, mentioned, but at least alluded to the distinction between this precious metal coinage, money, which is different than
fiat currency. Yeah.
But I'm still confused about.
Sure.
Do we have to go all the way back to shells and nuts, or
Well,
because I still don't feel like I have a very good understanding of even the basics of shells and nuts,
right,
representing some value.
Well, you got to realize. Okay, so cowrie shell money.
Yeah, thank you, cowrie. I should have been able to say cowrie. Mongongo.
I don't know.
Mongongo nuts.
I don't know.
Oh, okay. I might have made that up.
The cowrie shells are hard to get. And so if you have some cowrie shells buried in your backyard, they're not laying around because you're not even going to find them.
Represent like labor hours.
Scarcity. Yeah. Yeah. Nobody's going to pay you with pebbles from the ground. They're too common, and anybody can go pick one up and give it to you.
But no one needs cowrie shells.
No, you can't use them for anything. They're a token of accounting.
In the same way that gold is a token?
In a technical sense, yeah. But it would be, people were getting swindled. You might take some bronze coins and wash them with a little bit of silver on the outside and sit there and go, I bought 30 gallons of olive oil, but it only cost me, this little bit of bronze. But then husband comes home and says, hey, honey, I sold my olive oil today. Isn't that great? And she goes, oh, good. And then 5 days later, he goes and he has to buy a pig for the feast to celebrate the end of the olive harvest season. And he comes back home and says, hey, honey, those silver coins I brought home? Turns out they were bronze and were ruined. And, he gets yelled at.
Dang.
So they were, those markets, these are pre-fiat currency of coinage. This is before banking. And what happened was specialized financial services of a guy who was an expert and had a tablet in his head, and he was of good repute, would sit there in Venice or Florence or something and say, hey, you guy coming in with your ship to Venice, come to my place, my warehouses, and show me what you got. You're bringing in timber or or slaves.
Right.
Venice did a lot of slave trading. And show me what coins you have, and I'll tell you what you can do here in Venice.
Huh.
Because
what
you had
get
to know
for the goods.
Yeah. You had to know, okay, so we're trading with the eastern edge of the Mediterranean because of the Crusades or whatever. And so you've got Arabic dinars based on the denarius, I'm pretty sure. You've got Byzantine hyperperions. You've got all, coins from the entire Mediterranean. And I don't know, maybe some cowrie shells. I don't know. Probably not. you want a guy who's an expert, who's going to look at your purse with 5 different kinds of coinage in it and go, okay.
Wait, is he looking at my ship full of goods, or is he looking at my purse?
Both. He wants you at his warehouse. He wants to be the middleman.
And then he exchanges both the coinage you have and the goods you've brought for...
Depending.
Well, in this case, the florin.
It depends. He might be like, I don't want wood. You want to go talk to, Cosimo over there.
He knows how to move wood.
Yeah, straight up. Or like, this wood is, damn, I don't know where you got it, but it's really high quality stuff, and we need to make some galleys, and the government might buy it from you. The government of Venice, that's some good oak you've got there for the keel of our galleys don't have keels, but because of all these experts and because of the trade going on, it enforced a discipline on the part of mints and government mints.
Okay.
There are no private mints. To be like, no, we better make damn well sure we put 5 ounces of real gold in our coin, because if we don't, they're going to catch us immediately. We might be able to pass it off to the very first person.
Mm-hmm.
This diluted coin.
Yes.
That we're reissuing at a lower purity, but then it will be immediately caught.
What's the consequence for that? For the government minting
right.
Not as precious coins.
Right. The consequence is people are going to demand more of those coins for the same goods and services. 5 of the coins bought of these really high quality old gold coins from the Byzantine Empire bought my whole shipload of slaves.
Okay.
But then they diluted the currency. And I know this emperor did it. They couldn't hide it,
How does that hurt the emperor?
Because then it takes 10 of those coins. It increases prices. People want the real metal currency. They want the real metal, the purity of their silver or their gold or their copper sometimes. Because it's an exchange rate is what it is. It hurts the exchange rate. All of a sudden, the exchange value of Byzantine coinage, all of it goes down because then people trust it less. They're like, well, fuck. They didn't even publicly announce that they were going to dilute the purity of their silver.
I didn't even know that the
swindled
nickel
me.
Was now worth 4 cents.
Yeah, they swindled me. I gave them 5 cents worth of stuff, but I only got 4 cents back.
But when you say them, do you mean
the government?
The government.
Yeah. Because they're the only ones. They're the only people with enough clout.
All right, so the government is also buying and selling things with their same coinage.
Yes.
In a way.
Yeah. Well, so literally, who is the most important people you pay if you're a government? Your soldiers. They get pissed. You're fucking telling me I have to sit on this...
These coins aren't worth as much as they were 3 years ago.
Yeah, okay. You keep doing this shit, we might revolt.
I'm so thick, but the money stuff always gets me confused.
Yeah, governments
because like you already, just a few seconds ago, sort of made the case that faith is an important aspect of this whole system. Even though there's a practical reality of, how much pure metal is in this coin... But, we don't trust it as much anymore.
Right.
That's a consequence.
Yeah. Because people they tend to be...
Because none of them are good for anything anyway. I mean, the coins.
In a technical sense, no.
I mean, nowadays, gold might be important for, circuitry or something, but...
Right. And there's industrial uses for silver, but if you think about... Why do you do what your boss tells you to do? Is it because you love them? Is it because you'd do anything for them? Or is there, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe an economic incentive for you to do what your boss tells you to do.
We've all decided this much is worth this much is worth this much.
Yeah. And it's a trust faith issue. And labor is... sacred to people. If you're going to make them work for free, you have to beat them into submission and make them into slaves or indentured servants, or somehow make the social consequences of them revolting worse than the consequences of stealing their labor. You know, there's always, you know, like there's no institution more expensive than slavery in the long run. It's so stupid to enslave other people. It's the stupidest fucking thing you could do, and we do it all the time. History is just full of it. But
looks like a good idea when you get into it.
Seemed like a great idea at the time. I just love stealing other people's
free labor. Come on, that used to be pretty expensive when I had to pay someone for it.
Free, quote, free. There's always the consequence of it. Free money. Wouldn't it be cool if we just swindled people? I told them I was giving them gold coins and I gave them lead coated in gold. Wouldn't that be nice to be free? Yeah, I got away with it, sort of, but in the long run, there's the consequence of it. So, an interesting point to make about the gold florin specifically. 1248, 1242, something like that.
Okay.
It's a kind of a watershed in Christendom and Western European history. Because before that, there are no gold coins issued by governments in Western Europe from the Western Roman Empire on. So
from like
400,
500.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha.
It's a good 800 years, about 700, 800 years where it's just not happening. It's not happening in England. It's not happening in France.
Wait, so what's happening instead?
There are some coins, but not a gold coin. There are silver coins.
Okay.
Yeah. So the Charlemagne and the Carolingians were famous for trying to restart. I think they had silver and copper coins, I believe, but they did not issue gold coins. There wasn't enough gold, and there wasn't enough economic activity to bring gold in from outside.
Ah, dang.
Yeah. Kind of the one I know.
Where does it come from? You say
the
outside.
Arab world,
Oh.
pretty much.
Of course.
The Arab world was full of gold coins around the time of the Carolingian. They were doing very well.
So this is you when you tell me that this is new and interesting that Florence did this in the 1240s because it hadn't happened for 800 years.
Yeah, I'm not including the Arab world.
Right, but you're making the case that, well, there's silver coins and then there are gold coins.
Yeah. Okay. Gold.
There's coinage, but this is an interesting event because it's the first reinstitution of gold coins.
Yeah. Being able to issue a gold coin that's a good one, accepted by other people, is a prestige. It's prestige. There's also prestige in that. It's like, do you know how economically powerful we are? Check out these gold coins, asshole.
Economically powerful.
Yeah, that's how strong we are. We are able to tax our people and generate so much wealth. Florence doesn't have any gold mines. Where was the gold coming from? It's not, birds aren't picking up gold coins from Tunisia and happening to drop them in Tuscany.
How did they do it?
How'd they do it? How'd that gold get there?
Yeah.
Trade.
Their trade. Yeah.
We have good institutions. We have good laws. We do not mostly steal the wealth of our people. And we have good infrastructure, and we have all these things, and it allows us to pull in gold from all over the world, the old world. So it's a prestige item. Another example of an early Italian republic, is a really good one that kind of highlights it, is Amalfi. Amalfi is just a little bit north of Naples, and it's this republic that was located in terms of land area. It's like at the bottom of a canyon. It's utterly gorgeous, and I really want to visit. They were doing what Venice was doing hundreds of years later. They were doing it before the Crusades. Before the Crusades, kind of changed things in the Eastern Mediterranean. Ooh. What a sentence. They were shipping raw materials, hides, timber, probably not slaves, not European slaves. Hides, timber, what else? Tar, pitch, from Europe to the Arab world, which really needed those things because there ain't much trees in North Africa anymore at the time. And they were selling it for solid gold, and they were selling it for gold and silver, but also exchanging it for high quality Arab goods built in the Middle East, made in the Middle East, fine furniture, silk, things like that, taking it back north to Amalfi and then reselling it. And Amalfi had all this wealth, and they were paying for estates in Italy with solid gold from the Arab world when everybody else was, barely able to wipe their own ass. It was just it was much more feudal, like labor for labor, barter type stuff. They were much more economically sophisticated. But they didn't have quite a strong enough base, and so they were eventually conquered by like the Lombards. But they were kind of a little itty bitty like pre-Venice, a little pre-Genoa that existed, set the pattern, and then were subsumed into history. Damn. And they left behind this gorgeous little...
Sometimes those early adopters.
Yeah. It's better to be second or third. Sometimes,
right.
Because it might work. Venice did that on a massive scale because the Crusades gave them trade depots on the Levant that gave them favorable trade circumstances. Basically, like, you better ship your stuff through Acre and Beirut and Ashkelon and Antioch, not, through a Muslim port. Yeah. The gold coin, the florin, was a watershed event for Western Europe, for Christendom. The Arabs are like, yeah, that's what we've been doing for a long time.
Been doing that.
Yeah. You've been using, and it's really cool the way numismatics is, like sometimes a Christian king would take an Arab gold coin and very crudely like stamp his face over it, because Arab coins don't have imagery because that's forbidden.
Oh, interesting.
And so there'd be like there's an Arabic inscription over like this Christian king's face.
Stamp it. It's soft enough. You just hit it.
Yeah.
Hit it with your...
It was kind of like that. Yeah. It's really funny.
representation of yourself. Bonk, bonk, bonk. Wait, look at my new coin.
Yeah. It's neat. The blending that happens at the edges. Sicily was Arab for a while, and so they were part of more of the Arab world, and then it was conquered by Normans, and so there's this Roger II, this Christian king buried in a cloak that's stitched very fine, like I think it's silk, Arabic inscription around the edge.
Wow.
Yeah. There was another Norman king. Oh no. Frederick II, Hohenstaufen, the Stupor Mundi, he spoke fluent Arabic. He was going on crusades, and he had more time. He had a better time correspond because he grew up in Sicily, and he was speaking. He spoke fluent Arabic at the court.
Wow.
Yeah. Sicily.
I didn't know that about Sicily.
Yeah. He preferred corresponding with his Arabic enemies, the Sultan of Cairo, right, than he did dealing with the Pope.
They were better pen pals.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, they were more interesting to talk to. So yeah, Sicilian coins can be really strange. You find Muslim Arabic inscriptions on Christian coins sometimes very crudely done, like they're imitating it. They know it's a language, but they don't know how to write Arabic, but they're like, good gold coins
look like this.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, straight up.
Right.
Yeah. As if we were trying to draw a US dollar. And like, I think there's a pyramid with the eye at the top.
Yeah.
E pluribus something.
Right.
But
I actually don't know that script. So, the letters sort of look like this.
It's a facsimile. It's a facsimile.
Yeah. It's like not quite a cargo cult, but yeah.
Yeah. And that's how it is. That because people are economic creatures as much as anything else, and they don't like getting screwed over. And so coinage, especially in the ancient world before fiat currency, they exist in an ecosystem of other coins. None of them exist in isolation. Except, and here's the point I've kind of been dancing around. So the purity of the gold florin lasted longer than the purity of the silver denarius of the whole damn Roman Empire. Tuscany, the Republic of Florence doesn't even control the whole of Italy. They control not even a third of it. They're this corner. in the northwest, but south of the Po River, they get invaded. They fight their neighbors. I mean, they lost a battle against Siena, for Christ's sake. How is it that this itty-bitty republic can hold the purity of its coinage longer than the whole damn Roman Empire that had silver mines and gold mines in Spain? And the Roman Empire sat there and destroyed the silver content of the denarius, which was the main coin. They were more heavily weighted toward a silver coin,
Okay.
Although they did have gold coinage. That you can just watch the silver content through the centuries of the Roman Empire.
What?
Tank. Why?
Why?
Because the Roman government was the only government in town. And so it kind of wrecked the...
You feel like you can do it. Well, we're the only game in town.
We can get
We're
away
the
with
only
it.
mint.
We can get away
Why
with it.
spend more than we have to?
Yeah.
We'll shave off a little. Shave off a little. Shave off a little.
Yes. And when you say shave off a little, you're just about describing it. They would collect taxes and say, hey, you got a big farm, 10,000 cows, whatever. You owe us
this much silver.
And they would collect all those denarii, and then they would melt them down because maybe there's a new emperor. Maybe it's Nero, and he wants to pay for a big, vain, glorious, stupid palace, his golden palace in Rome. I'm going to reissue twice as many coins with the same amount of silver. I'm going to dilute the silver with copper.
Cheaper when I'm literally buying labor from the construction workers?
Yeah.
I mean, you say pay, like that's part of why I get hung up, I think, is like,
right.
Well, if you're the emperor, you don't pay for anything. But I guess you still have, I mean, like you were reminding me earlier.
Yeah, you do. You pay for it.
Right. It's really hard to convince someone to do something for no money.
Yeah.
And you pay for it later.
Yes.
If you're enslaving folks.
Yeah, and if you are going to do, it's...
So you don't just say, build me the palace, now go do it. You pay folks to build the palace.
Oh, yeah.
But you think, as the emperor, well,
right.
I could just give them these half coins that we're pretending are full coins.
Yes, and that's what happened. And that's a specific example. Nero debased the denarius.
And then when those folks go and try and spend them, someone finds out, like you said, it might work once.
It works its way down through the pyramid of the economy. It's because you're not giving those new debased silver coins, you're not redistributing them to farmers doing primary production. You're not redistributing them to loggers or a guy fishing. You don't, because their labor is the base of the economy. Their labor is even lower than that. They are doing it in order to get paid. Mm-hmm. The economy works in a sequence. He is giving those coins to soldiers, bricklayers, artisans, the people who are going to do the painting, the consumers.
Right.
He distributes it to the top of the pyramid. So that diluted currency has to work its way down through the entire pyramid of the economy. Consumption at the top, production at the bottom. This is important.
Then I make a note. That looks more like a teepee, but...
Sure, yeah. The reason... One reason the Roman government was able to, quote, get away with this was because they were the only game in town. They were the only government over the entire Mediterranean and a little bit beyond. So it's not like people...
they're not relying on trade, because if they were, this bullshit silver coin wouldn't fly, right?
Right, but
you'd get bitten on that one if you're trying to trade with folks.
Right. The Roman government is not dependent on trade. It's an ancient land-based empire that happens to have an ocean in the middle. It's a agriculturally based society. So when so if you're a farmer on the northern part of modern day Mauritania, and you're growing olives, wheat, and wine, and a Roman official and you're doing it for money because the economy has been monetized, coins,
right.
Not really barter.
Right.
A government official
I want to sell my olives, wine, and wheat.
Which is, when it's done properly and justly and honestly, is actually very good for the economy. It stimulates it because barter sucks because you have to sit there and find out how many pounds of olive,
It's inefficient.
Yes.
Is what you're saying.
Yes, it is. Yeah, because you can't just universally...
We're spending labor hours figuring it out, and also...
Okay, you raise chickens and I make olive oil. I have all the chickens I want. You have far more chickens than you want because you're a chicken farmer, so go find something else. Or we could turn it into coinage and have markets, functioning markets.
Okay.
Barter sucks. Even that, like in the end, we are exchanging things for other things, and labor is a thing. So it's like a layer of onion. It's like an onion layer. It's the same symmetry at every layer. It's just more and more complexity. Like, well, if that's the case, Adam, how did economies function before there were coins? Well, because of that symmetry, it was sort of barter, but maybe it wasn't coins. It was big ingots of precious metal for the big purchases. But the Roman government is the only government in town. If the tax man comes to the door and says, yeah, we assessed your property 10 years ago, and you owe us this much every year. You're like, okay, then I'll pay you that every year. You can't move. You can't say, you know what, I'm not going to be part of the Roman Empire anymore. I'm going to go to this other...
Right, you can't say, the dollar's down, I think I'll...
I want to pay a bit less.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
They got you by the something or others.
Right. So when you're the only game in town...
So they get away with devaluing their own currency for a while.
For a little bit. Whereas, let's say you are Florence and you start diluting your coinage because you're dumb. You're like, you know what, okay, it would wreck your trade.
Right, they weren't dumb, which is why...
Because it would have bitten them sooner.
Right.
The Romans kind of were able to...
And the basis of their wealth was...
much more on trade.
On trade, right.
Yeah, so if the Florentine... It's not like they weren't a unitary economy. So if the Florentine government wants to collect taxes to do its government stuff, like pay its army or whatever.
Do they?
Yeah, they do.
Okay.
They want to collect those taxes. If they start diluting the currency, cheating,
right.
Other trading partners like Venice or whatever will start demanding more of the coin.
Right, because it's worth less.
Because it is worth less, and so they want the same volume of gold. And so Venice is like, yeah, we'd love to buy your wool, but not we want to buy your wool. We want to sell you something. We need it. We need you cut your gold content by half, so we're going to require twice as many coins.
Now,
and if you try to renege on the deal, whatever, we won't trade with you. And if you try to steal, we will arrest you.
I just
free trade.
I just thought of another dumb thing, but I'm confused. Like, why isn't that a wash? I'm spending half as much on these coins. They want twice as much because they know they're worth half as much.
Because it. Okay, yeah. Why isn't? Yeah. Exactly. Okay. If a loaf of bread cost $1 million, but everybody's getting paid at the same level, right?
Right. Like, I'm cheating as the mint of the florin, right? I decide, well, now my florins are what I'm only putting half as much gold in them. Venice figures it out and says we want twice as much. Right. What's the difference?
So we'll pay them twice as much. Okay. Yeah. In a technical way, you're not wrong. Because long-term inflation where nobody feels it, I don't care what the price of a loaf of bread was 200 years ago. Because if you not even that long. If you look at movies like The Sting, it takes place during the Depression. He pays for a meal one time with like 2 dimes.
Uh-huh.
And he's eating like a pork chop dinner, the FBI agent that they fool. Well, I don't care. Because for me, a $10 bill feels like 2 dimes. You're okay. It's the timestamp value of money as well. because
There's a consequence of
it hurts your investment opportunities, because if you want, let's say you want to make, let's very simply divide the economy between production and consumption. Let's say you are a wool farm. Let's say you're Florence and you want to build a new wool processing factory, right? And let's say it's before you've diluted the currency.
Mm-hmm.
I want to build that factory and the cost of labor is X.
Mm-hmm.
If I start paying for it by diluting the currency, I want to pay for it, but I don't want to do it by increasing the volume of my trade and then collecting it in taxes and investing it into labor. I'm just going to do it by melting down the gold and issuing twice as many coins with, more silver in it or copper. The timestamp value gets hurt. So you paid for that quantity of labor with 2x, but you're not, it's going to hurt you down the line with trade. The return on investment is now 1/2x. It hurts you. It does. Because why can't prices just be whatever, right?
Right.
Right. The timestamp value starts to get hurt, especially if people realize what's going on. And this is the other thing that matters. Like, okay, so let's say Grandpa, who was in the movie The Sting, and he paid for his dinner with 2 dimes.
Mm-hmm.
He says, you know what? When I was your age, 80 years ago,
I paid for it with 1 dime.
I paid for it with 2 dimes. Here you go, son. I'm going to give you 2 dimes. That's a real good investment right there. You can buy a whole dinner. No, I can't. You gave me 20 cents. It's not even a stick of gum. So long-term inflation, that kind of, it happens slow enough that the value of labor does not get diluted by the inflation in the price, seems to be kind of fine in the long run. So like if the price during the previous whole generation was lower, but now I'm in a new generation and I know that more or less the value of my labor is going to be the same throughout my generation, that's cool.
Right. So it's all right if back then 2 dimes bought a pork chop and 4 hours of labor got you 2 dimes.
Yes.
And then
in the
40
future,
years later, it's 10 dimes, but the same labor hours got you the same pork chop.
Right.
It's
right.
all right if that happens.
What's the lowest wage you would probably work for? How many dollars an hour? It's an interesting question, isn't it? Because it's not some random number. But if you talk to like old people alive now in 2020, they're like, yeah, when I was a kid, minimum wage was like $5 an hour. Okay, go work at that rate. Or less.
It's like, I think it's still like $7.50.
Yeah, the federal
places,
rate.
Man.
$7 an hour? Are you fucking kidding me?
And they like fucking steal your tips if you're a waitress.
Yeah.
Depending on the county or
right.
the state.
Right. The important distinction when inflation really starts to bite into and destroy an economy is when the printing of money or the dilution of silver purity of coinage starts to bite into the labor, the value of labor. That seems to be a threshold.
How do we know the difference between the half as much silver in my coins, pay twice as much to my trade partners, and like, what is it that makes it get all the way down to the production, to the labor?
Okay.
I mean, you were
Okay.
talking about timestamps. Like there's a like real world. I don't want to say trickle down, but like these effects start at the top and
Right.
go all the way
Right.
down. So what's the difference between the inflation that isn't dangerous,
Right.
where, well, now it's $4 for the pork chop, but the same number of labor hours.
Right. Right.
Is there something, easy you could give me as a dummy to tell the difference between that and now my labor hours aren't worth as much?
It would. No, nothing easy.
Okay. I was afraid of that.
Unfortunately, economies are mass psychological phenomenon. So you can't treat them as if there's some physical constant. You can go out and say, "Oh
right.
yeah,
I want you to tell me this machine looks like this and this machine looks like that."
Right? Yeah. The coefficient of some, timestamp.
Right. Or this one has a giggly gook and this one has a whirly gig.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Young's modulus. This one's squishy and this one's firm. It's not there. And here's a really, really good example of this. The first fiat currencies in the world that were not based on the quantity of precious metal that is the value of it being a physical quantity of metal is you can sit there and know. Like, I know what pure silver is.
Oh, that's interesting. Because I've always been confused about that, too. Because, like,
you can test it.
They're both faith-based, in a way.
Yes, they are. Yeah. The coin of gold by itself, locked in a room, can't do a damn thing. It's
right.
a piece
it
of
doesn't
metal.
help me cook my, bake my bread. It doesn't help me cook my chicken.
Just try telling it to,
Right.
Bake my bread, gold coin.
But I think I just got it. Because, like, there's an assurity.
Yes.
Like, we can know how much gold it contains or doesn't.
Yes. Hell, the Archimedes principle. This much gold displaces this much water.
Right.
I know it's pure.
So that's the difference between precious metal coinage and fiat currency.
Yeah.
Is the one can be known.
Yes.
And the other
is just a number. It's a number in your bank account. Don't tell me to bake your loaf of bread for a piece of bronze. I am an expert baker. I'm baking for the emperor, and fuck you paying me with bronze. Fuck you. I can't pass that on to anybody else.
Right.
I can't pay for the grain with the bronze. I can't pay for the yeast.
Right. You can't trick me, and I can't be sure enough I could trick the next guy. So no, thank you.
Yeah.
I need the real deal.
And
because we all are clever enough to know the real deal. We bite our coins or whatever.
Yeah.
We drop them in fluid and see how much. Yeah.
Or a chemical assay test. And right down the road, there's a guy who is an expert in coins.
Right.
In Venice.
And I can ask him.
I can go and he's like, "What? How fucking stupid are you?
You just took
a Byzantine gold coin and you didn't get the news that 5 years ago whose emperor portrait is on this coin? Remember him? Nicephorus Phocas? Yeah. He diluted the currency, you fucking moron. Did you do this, or should you whip your servant?
It's so funny. Like
you accepted.
It doesn't the difference doesn't matter as far as baking your bread goes, but it does matter as far as everyone knows how much is in what.
It's a mass psychological phenomenon. If there's a bunch of gold bars in a room that's not well guarded, all of a sudden an army of people appears to do something about it. If there's a vein of very thin gold in the ground, it's a different story, isn't it? And if I have enough precious metals circulating in my economy, everything's kind of cool because you find the actual value of the labor of your society. It's a lubricant. It's a magical lubricant.
That's interesting too. I don't want to get too far off because I'm still excited about maybe knowing the difference between, precious metal coinage and fiat currency. Right. But labor hours aren't necessarily the perfect way to understand the precious metal currency either, though, right? Like
No.
the labor, the value, the considered value of gold compared to the considered value of silver, when that's how we were doing things, was probably not the perfect ratio of the labor hours it took to make or refine
No.
or smelt.
No.
Right.
But, and this is kind of something, like you'll just have to kind of accept this. Often when powerful governments found very rich deposits of silver or gold, it was real good for the economy. Athens, with its silver mines at Laurium, was like one of the only ancient Greek city-states that had a source of silver, and it went a long way towards lubricating the economy of their little Aegean Empire, the brief Athenian Empire. And when the Roman Republic was expanding into Spain and in the Balkans and eventually into the Carpathians, boy, they got as much gold out of the ground and silver as they could. I mean, because the more of that is in the economy is then able to find resources and energy that wasn't necessary. That's not that a subsistence barter economy almost can't, or has a lot more trouble finding.
But they still don't really represent real labor hours at the very bottom.
Except that they do, because then you can exchange it for other people's labor. That's what I mean by saying it's magic.
Right.
I mean,
that's the trouble. That's the real swippo swappo. Like if you're lucky enough to find a vein of this or that, you do expend some labor hours to mine it, but it doesn't really represent labor.
Then what does?
It represents a windfall, right?
Okay, yeah.
We found some gold, and now,
right,
just so happens everyone believes in it. So it's a windfall.
Yeah, okay.
If we didn't believe in it, it wouldn't be a windfall.
Well, cowrie shells or wampum, that was a specific type of tusk shell. You couldn't get it everywhere. It's not all over the place, and so you're willing to accept this as an exchange.
So funny.
It has to be
it's
scarce.
Still based on scarcity, and that's
The whole point is that it's scarce.
The whole point is that it's scarce, but it's also like coincidentally scarce.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, we found some gold. Now we're rich.
If silver was really, really much more rare than gold, it might very well be reversed. But hey, the periodic table. We're not, unless you're Sparta.
Right, but their values aren't correlated with how hard it is to get out of the ground.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot more silver in the upper Earth's crust than gold. It's not a coincidence. It ain't.
Okay, but the all right, maybe correlated, but I'd be surprised to learn that their respective values were close to their scarcity.
Are you sure?
Oh no, I'm not sure anymore.
So
I've talked myself out of it.
The three
precious. But it's just
it seems so fucking weird.
Curious
doesn't
to
it?
me, like okay.
Why is third place copper?
Right.
The bronze medal. Second place. It seems like okay.
So it's all based on all right. But now I get confused because we were talking about labor hours and now we're talking about scarcity, and I don't know how they relate.
It's kind of like a rate.
I guess scarcity would relate. Well, it's easier to find. We're playing a video game. There's more silver around than there is gold. Okay.
And you need it and you look at.
Sorry, I'm a dummy. Talked myself out of it.
That's not bad. I think Rome was fully trimetallic. They had gold, silver, and bronze. The big gold coins. The word soldier comes from solidus, which is a gold coin that you paid the soldiers in. The denarius was the main one. It's in the middle, and then the bronze eyes, however you pronounce it, And they had other bronze coins or just the real, I want to buy a fish. I want to buy I want to buy
I'm
a
not
tortilla.
paying a soldier. I just want to buy a fish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the gold coin is worth, a year of a soldier's wages. It's not that much. And the bronze coin, because you're not going to cut up your big gold coin. You need to make change. It seems so weird. And then you're like, well, why am I surrounded by things, like you walk over a bridge and it's like, how much did the bridge cost to make? $20 million. Cool. I'm eating a hot dog that cost 10 cents. Mm-hmm. Okay. All these things.
Yeah.
It feels
that's always impressed me. I mean, this is sort of dumb.
How many hot dogs to the bridge?
Yeah, exactly. Or like
I dropped
you could buy a car for $2,000 or a diamond for $10,000. That's always
the diamond won't get you to work.
No, yeah. Sorry, I was yelling at you.
It's fine with me. So the first example of fiat currency happened by accident. It was not by design. It happened in China, of course. And it was during the Tang Dynasty.
Right after they invented toilet paper, they invented fiat currency.
Pretty much. Right. They, the economy got too big for the circulation of silver. Silver has always been the main Chinese coinage in the imperial system. Tails. Big, goofy looking cup-shaped
the boat.
Yeah, the boat thing. And the economy was too big, and so people were trying to make transactions and were having trouble physically exchanging that amount of silver. They were.
It's kind of unwieldy.
It is. Yeah. It's like I want to buy a boat or I want to invest in a ceramics factory and I need 20 million somethings of tape. And it's
but now I need to buy a boat to get it there.
Yeah. Yeah. And they started exchanging receipts, because you give me
shit.
Yeah. And eventually the government was like, wait a minute.
We don't need to move this silver around.
Yeah, we just need...
It costs a lot of calories.
Yeah. If we keep track of who owns it, we can just exchange. And they did that. And they, because they're Chinese, were very disciplined about how much fiat currency they issued, even though they were doing it for the first time. So they never had hyperinflation until the Mongol conquest. Because the Mongols don't give a fuck. They're there to plunder China anyway. And a really good way to plunder it is print money on paper. Doesn't cost me a thing, and I don't have to use any gold or silver. And before the Mongol conquest, the Southern Song dynasty got even more economically developed and specialized than the Tang, and they had not those informal receipts of paper that the Tang exchanged, but the government took over printing money. There are government silk and paper.
And I'm sure as soon as that happened, they said no more of your guys' little exchange receipts.
Yeah, they would have monopolized it. Yeah. It probably would. I mean, it would have just driven it out instantaneously.
Right.
Why would
this is easy, and we all know what, and we also all know what it's worth.
And the government backs it up. I can go to the government and pay my taxes with that paper money.
Woo!
Damn,
that's an innovation.
Hell of an innovation. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure they were able to pay. Okay, hear ye. I think in the Southern Song, private citizens and businessmen were able to pay their taxes with fiat currency.
Paper.
I could be wrong.
Government issued paper.
Government issued paper, yeah. Yeah. Why would you accept some other guy's handwritten note?
Right.
Of
and just probably in this, well, no, maybe that's not a good jump. I was thinking in the same way you'd have a guy down the street who knew how coins look.
Yes, because the coins also stayed. And the paper money never made it out of the Southern Song, and then the Mongols conquered everybody. But Song coins with their globalization, especially in maritime trade in the South China Sea and all that. There's Song Dynasty coins all over Southeast Asia because they all were also very, very disciplined.
And
about
a couple of them made it to South America too. No, it's a dumb 1421 joke or whatever.
1491. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
And so the size of your economy has a whole lot to say about what kind of means of exchange you're going to use. If your economy's real low and at subsistence level, and maybe you're stuck on a little farm and you're a peasant or whatnot, yeah, you can exchange labor for
goods,
feudal dues. Yeah,
or right. Actually, that's more interesting. Yeah,
your manorial lord might not kill you if you actually farm his fields.
Gotcha. Right.
But if it's a big, sophisticated, globalized economy,
someone knocks on your door and demands taxes.
Yeah, taxes. Yeah.
And then you can either give them silver or gold, or eventually
paper money.
Paper.
Damn. And what's interesting is so the Yuan, the Mongol dynasty, blew out the currency in like a generation. They just printed. They didn't care. So they stopped using fiat currency in China, and the Ming were so anti-yuan, and they remembered.
There's a fiat singularity in China.
Yeah. No, straight up. The Ming didn't use fiat currency. They went back to coinage and precious metals.
Actually, this Song Dynasty coin, I will take, but this...
Not the paper,
but not the paper.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. And so, I gotta pee. Let's stop and then go to hyperinflation.
Okay.
Make it a two-parter.
Sounds good.
I'm stopping now.